Midweek Politics with Dave Pakman on midweekpolitics.com.
Welcome back to Midweek Politics. I'm David Pakman. Joining us in studio is Bill Scher from Campaign for America's Future and, of course, the great liberaloasis.com. And on the phone is Kristen Soltis from the Winston Group. I guess we could say a Republican strategist. Is that fair?
Yes. It seems like everybody's got a title like that these days.
So we've got just a few days left until this election. I want to start with Kristen. What's your sense of, we'll do predictions later, so we won't go into exact numbers now. I want to build the drama towards the end of the segment. But what's your sense of, has there been a momentum shift that some indicate away from some of the Republican candidates in the last week or two, in your opinion?
I don't really think so. I think what has happened is that pollsters started implementing likely voter screens, perhaps a little bit too early, to where you had maybe a couple weeks ago, you showed, surveys with huge numbers of conservatives and really great results for Republicans. But the thing with Democratic base is that, a lot of times unions will then encourage their voters. They will eventually turn out, but sometimes they can slip through, there are a variety of groups that can slip through some of these pollsters' likely voter screens who do wind up voting. So as you get closer to an election, things are going to tighten up somewhat, just as a result of those screens becoming a little bit more accurate and reflective of what the electorate looks like.
Bill, when you think about the Democratic candidates, and we'll get to some of the Republican candidates, who do you think right now is down and that is most surprising or telling about what's maybe going to happen with Democrats? I mean, some people are pointing to Russ Feingold. What one race do you think is a concern right now, an indicator? And you're going to want to get much closer to that mic, Bill.
It's hard for me to pinpoint a single indicator.
Okay.
What I think I see as an overarching trend is a lot of these Senate races are tightening. You're not seeing a lot of Republican candidates breaking free in this last week before Election Day. In Missouri, the Republican is. Maybe Rand Paul in Kentucky is. But those are races that were considered pretty leaning Republican in the first place. The races that are more on knife's edge, Colorado, Pennsylvania, some of the reaches that Republicans wanted, California, Washington, West Virginia, you're not seeing a Republican breakaway in those. That says to me, on Election Day, you're going to see a lot of gutting it out on the ground as opposed to this massive wave that you're getting through much of that's being predicted in much of the media narrative.
Hey, Kristen, there's a lot of talk, of this enthusiasm gap that some say exists and some say doesn't exist, and some say they just can't stand when the term is even brought up. What's your sense of the enthusiasm on the Republican side? I mean, with the Tea Party, we know what some are calling enthusiasm and some are calling rage and some are calling psychosis, depending on who you talk to. Is that an indicator of the Republican Party overall in the enthusiasm, or are there kind of two camps?
I think, for either party, your base is your base because they're the loyal folks that turn out. Enthusiastic or not, I'm not a big believer that bases, by and large, sit at home and that they don't turn out for elections and that's what things swing on. For instance, if you look at both 1994 and 2006, in both of those elections, 36% of voters were Republicans. It had nothing to do with tons of Republicans came out in 94 and tons sat home in 2006. The bigger deal, I think, is on enthusiasm among independents who are more excited to vote Republican than independents who would normally break Democratic being excited to vote Democratic. I think it's that persuasion element that's going to be the bigger deal. And so the question is, how enthusiastic are independents going to be this year, and which way are they going to break? I think that's far more interesting than, and I think will have far greater an impact than Republican enthusiasm versus Democratic enthusiasm.
What do you think, Bill?
Well, and in addition to that is what Chris was talking about before, likely voters versus unlikely voters. A lot of these likely voter polls are presuming that younger voters, minority voters, are not necessarily going to show up, which is usually true in midterm elections. And Obama had an unusual election that he was able to rally so many of them to expand the voting base in 2008. Now, the Democrats, with Obama at the lead, are trying very hard to whip up those communities. So you don't know what the voting pool is going to be exactly. And one difference that we have between this year and, say, 1994 is I would argue this is the most right-wing field of candidates in modern American history. You have, and not a terribly well-vetted group of candidates. So you have a lot of people who are saying intemperate things, some personal baggage in some cases, making very radical notions about the unemployment insurance being unconstitutional, minimum wage being unconstitutional, that sort of
That's
stuff.
the least of it, yeah.
You have some data points you can use to rally those voters. Now, I'm not saying it is going to work. I'm saying they have some tools at their disposal that they didn't necessarily have to have if it wasn't for how Republican primary voters treated this campaign and the things they didn't have at their disposal in 1994.
I think that Bill's point is absolutely correct in terms of we don't know what this electorate is going to look like, and that's why I, as a Republican pollster, get a little bit nervous when I see these huge gaps between the results of a registered voter poll and then when they apply that screener, how big things shift. Nevada Senate race being a great example. CNN did a bunch of polling in a variety of Senate races, and in Nevada, when you look at the registered voters, you have Harry Reid up. But then when you look at likely voters, you show a fairly sizable Scher and Angle lead. And so as a result of that sort of big swing, it's showing that there are a ton of conservative voters in Nevada in a way that hasn't been seen in elections, in the last few decades, if you look at the exit polls. And so, yeah, I'll buy that the electorate has moved a little bit to the right and that we're going to see more conservatives this time around. But as a Republican, I'm worried that some folks on my side of the aisle are getting a little too excited about polls that I don't know if their sample ideologically is what it's going to look like on Election Day.
Midweek Politics is made possible by listeners like you and by Greenfield Savings Bank, building a strong community one account at a time, with neighborhood offices in Greenfield, Amherst, Conway, Shelburne Falls, South Deerfield, and Turners Falls, and online at greenfieldsavings.com. By the Daily Hampshire Gazette and GazetteNet.com, connecting our communities with local news and information. By DIF Design, specializing in custom business websites at DIFdesign.com. Find out more about underwriting Midweek Politics at midweekpolitics.com.